Good day, everyone. Today we simplify MAPE, mean absolute percentage error, MAD, mean absolute deviation, and talk how important it is to know the bias in planning. So, your planning team tracks MAPE, tracks MAD, and they present it every month to the top management. The top management nods and the meeting moves on. Here is the question nobody asked: in which direction is the error? MAPE tells you the size, it does not tell you the direction. Bias does, and bias is almost never tracked. A 15% MAPE with a positive 20% bias means you are systematically over forecasting every single period. Your supply chain is permanently overstocked, and you are congratulating yourself on a 15% MAPE. So, this episode, we are going to discuss three metrics: mean absolute percentage error, mean absolute deviation, and bias. So, mean absolute deviation was not created because it was a perfect forecasting metric. It became popular because decades ago, companies needed something simple enough to calculate without computers. That simplicity is why it spread everywhere. MAP became popular because finance teams wanted percentage number that could compare small products and large products on the same scale. It solved a business comparison problem, so it became the standard benchmark. Bias came from quality control, not supply chain. It was originally used to detect whether a system was consistently drifting in one direction. Supply chain adopted it much later, and because of that, most planning systems never made it as a default metric. So the forecasting dashboard most companies use today was not carefully designed with from scratch. It evolved over time based on old limitations, business needs, and historical habits. Those old choices still shape modern planning systems, even though the original constraints no longer exist. So MAD removes the plus and minus signs before calculating the average. So it tells you how big the errors are, but not whether the forecast is usually too high or too low. That makes it useful for operations team because they can understand the error in actual units. MAP converts the error into percentages before averaging. This lets you compare products with very different sales volumes using one common scale. A product selling 50 units and another selling 50,000 units can now be compared easily. But just like MAD, MAPE also removes direction, so you still cannot see whether forecasts are consistently high or low. Bias, this is the only one that preserves direction over time. You keep the sign, you average the signed errors, and what you get is a number that tells you whether the system is consistently drifting in one direction or just fluctuating around the truth. That distinction, drift versus fluctuation, is the most expensive diagnostic question in forecasting, and it is the only one bias can answer. Now go straight to the result row: MAD 200 units, MAPE 20%. From a dashboard perspective, moderate errors, nothing alarming in this, nothing that would trigger a review meeting. Now look at what bias adds for 50 plus. Okay, now every period in this window, the model was high. That is not a fluctuation, that is a lean. The system is not wrong sometimes, it is consistently wrong in one direction. MAD and MAP just cleared the model, bias just convicted it. Same 4 months of data, the metric you chose changes the verdict. That is the point of this slide. Most organizations respond to forecast error with safety stock, and that response and approach is correct. Mm, but when the error is random, safety stock is designed to absorb variation that goes high sometimes and low sometimes. It assumes errors cancel out over time. But when you see positive bias, it breaks that assumption completely. The error does not cancel out, it compounds. You are not buffering against uncertainty, you are buffering against a model that is structurally pointed in the wrong direction. Every week you add more buffer, every week the overstock grows. The organization on the right panel did not have a forecasting problem, they had a question problem. The MAP was accurate, The reporting was complete. The one thing that was never asked was which way the error was going. That silence cost 18% of their inventory value every single month. And mind it that excess inventory does not stay free. It compounds through warehousing, transportation, handling, financing, markdowns, and write offs, quietly turning forecast bias into a P&L and a business problem. And when you think about it on global scale, from the environment perspective, it means factories, trucks, containers, and warehouses consuming natural resources for demand that never truly existed. Resources that could have been used more efficiently elsewhere or preserved for future demand. So, this is a very big and serious problem to be attended. So 3 years of S&OP meetings, MAP on the screen every time, leadership nodded every time. The model looked fine every time. What was sitting underneath, unasked, uncalculated, completely invisible, was 14 months of consistent directional signal. The data was not hiding; it was available in the same system that produced the MAPE report. It just not did give you the bias on the dashboard. That was the problem. Here is the uncomfortable part. When bias was finally run, the number did not shock the data. It was always going to be that number. The data has been trying to tell the story for over a year. Nobody had asked for the right chapter and the right answer. 50 lakh is not the cost of bad forecasting, it is the cost of asking the wrong questions consistently. Now, let us discuss about the three industries. So in automotive, the system constraint here is lead time, 12 to 16 weeks between order and delivery. By the time bias shows up in your inventory as a visible problem, the next 3 to 4 months of supply are already committed. You cannot unorder them. The pipeline is full, the damage is structural, and it arrived before you could see it. When we talk about retail and e commerce, the same bias reading demands a completely different response depending on where you are in the season. Positive bias in a week 2 is a markdown signal. Positive bias in a week 10 is a missed replenishment signal. Identical number, opposite action required. This is why weekly bias is not a nice to have in retail. It is the only signal that tells you which decision you are actually facing. Now, industrial B2B, it is a live calculation on the screen. Run it now. Take your top 20 SKUs by inventory value, estimate your bias percentage, multiply by 22%. That is the annual carrying cost of the direction question you are not asking. In most organizations, that number has never been put on paper. It should be on your desk by end of this week. Now let us take an example of a real example. There was a consumer goods company. MAP sat at 18% for 3 years. Every S&OP meeting, leadership saw the number and the model looked fine. Then a new planning head asked why bias was missing from the report. The response was simple: safety stock already covers the error. So now, but safety stock absorbs randomness, not structural direction. When bias was finally calculated, the model had been over forecasting by 22 units per week across 30 SKUs for straight 14 months. This was not forecast noise, it was a broken forecasting parameter running silently inside the system. Nearly 50 lakh of inventory should never have been ordered, and the MAPE looked acceptable the entire time. Now look at panel 1, that is most of you, your planning system shipped with a default accuracy dashboard. MAPE was on it, bias was not. Nobody asked why at go live, nobody reviewed it after. It has been running that configuration ever since. The critical thing to understand, this is not a technology gap. Bias is sitting in your system right now. It was there on day one. The calculation also exists, the field exists. It was simply never switched on in the reporting layer. Panel 4 is the action. This is not a project, it is not a budget conversation, it is a configuration request, half a day in most planning systems. At the field, set the trigger. 3 consecutive months of persistent direction means the model needs a review. That is all. Every month that configuration has not been switched on is a month of compounding cost that has already been paid. The question is only whether you pay it again next month. So let us take a system perspective of this. The table on screen shows you three tools and one cadence. What it cannot show you is a diagnostic logic that connects them. That is what this slide is actually about. There are two distinct failure modes in forecasting. The first, high MAPE, near zero bias, large errors, genuinely random, the environment is volatile, safety stock is the correct response. The model itself is not the problem. The second, low MAPE, high positive bias, moderate errors, completely directional. Demand may not be the primary source of instability. The forecasting logic itself may be introducing the distortion. And adding safety stock to that scenario is like trying to level a tilted floor by putting more furniture on the high side. It does not fix the tilt, it amplifies it. So, without bias in the room, both scenarios can look equally acceptable through MAP alone. You treat both with safety stock, one of them gets better, the other gets worse, and you never know which one you are actually facing. So, three things are happening in the current environment. They are not separate problems, they are one problem arriving from three directions simultaneously. AI planning tools do not audit your configuration before they learn from your data. Whatever directional error is sitting in your historical record, the model treats it as signal. It does not question it, it scales it. At portfolio level with full confidence, if bias was invisible in your pre AI system, it will be invisible in your AI system at 10 times the magnitude. Volatility since 2020 has changed the baseline. Parameters that were well calibrated for a stable 2019 demand environment are systematically underreactive to 2026 conditions. The market you are forecasting model was trained on no longer exists. The model does not know that, nobody told it. And ERP and planning system migrations are running globally right now. Every one of them is setting a default accuracy dashboard that will run for the next 5 to 10 years. Most of them are not including bias. That default is being locked in today in organizations all over the world, and it will compound silently for a decade. The same fix for all three: one field, one trigger, one configuration request. The cost of not doing it is now compounding across three converging forces at the same time. Now, this week, calculate your bias for any product. Take the last 12 months of forecast versus actual. For each month, subtract actual from forecast. Keep the sign. Average those 12 numbers. Consistently positive, you are over forecasting. Consistently negative, you are losing sales that should have been captured. So, next episode, the bullwhip effect. Okay. So, guys, like, share, subscribe, comment, and we will keep on discussing further. This was SCM Decoded for you, the global supply chain community. Thank you, guys.